We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin Amud Aleph and Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 7a. The Gemara continues a statement of Rava bar Bar Chana. Rava bar Bar Chana says that which Chazal say that a person should say three things on Erev Shabbos. Isartem eravtem adliku asaner. So he says it's necessary lememrinu b'nichus. It's necessary to say these things in a calm manner kihechi delakabel minei, in order that they be accepted from him. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ravashi says, Anolo Shmi Ali Hadar Rava bar Bar Chana. I never heard that which Rava bar Bar Chana says, but I did that logically. It makes sense to say these things in a calm way. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yavo says, Liolam al yatil adam ema yaser v'soch beis. So a person should not impose too much fear, excessive fear within his household. Sharei adam gadol hitil ema yaser v'soch beis, because there was a great man who imposed excessive fear within his house. V'achilu davar gadol, and they gave him to eat something great. And the Gemara continues, Umanu, now who is this individual? Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. It was Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. But the Gemara says, Hechilus al kadaitach. Do you really think that they actually gave him something to eat that was not kosher, that he should not have eaten? Hashta behemton shal tzadikim en HaKadosh Baruch Hu maybe takol al yodim. If we know now that even the animals of the righteous, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not bring a stumbling block through them, so tzadikim atzman lo kol shekain. So when you're talking about actual tzadikim, certainly it should never happen that he was given something that was not kosher to eat. So Ella, rather, the Gemara revises it, Big Shulachi lo davar gadol. They were seeking to give him something to eat that would have been non-kosher, but of course, he didn't actually eat it. And the Gemara says, Umay niu, now what was it that they were going to give him to eat? Avram and Achai, it was Avram and Achai. And Rashi explains, Avram and Achai, shenevad mehem Avram and Hashchuta. What happened was, they had lost a limb from an animal that was slaughtered properly, it was kosher. But because he had instilled so much fear in them, so chatchu avad of Avram and Achai, v'heviu tachtav shelo yavin. So his servants, they cut from Avram and Achai, and they brought it to him. They thought that they would give it to him, and that he wouldn't realize. And so they sought to bring him this davar gadol, this Avram and Achai. And again, that's what you see, that was because of the fact that he imposed too much fear, excessive fear within his household. And the Gemara continues, Shalach le Marukva Rebbe Lazar. Marukva sent to Rebbe Lazar the following message: Bnei Adam ha'umdim alai v'yodi l'masram l'malchus. There are people who are standing against me, they're tormenting me, and I can give them over to the government. Mahu, what's the halacha? Am I able to do that? Sirtet v'chasav le. So he wrote him, and he scratched lines on the parchment and wrote the following pasuk: Amarti eshmer darki mechato b'lashoni. I have to watch myself not to sin with my tongue. Eshmer l'fi machzon bod reshel negdi. I close my mouth, I don't speak when there's wickedness against me. And we understand that pasuk to mean afal pisha rashel negdi, even though there's wicked against me, eshmer l'fi machzon, I'm going to close my mouth. And so he essentially told him, based on this pasuk which he wrote to him, he essentially told him that he should not give this individual over to the government. Shalach le, so he sent him another message, kamitzar li tuva, they're tormenting me a lot, v'lo matzino de'ekom, I can't stand it, v'lo matzino de'ekom buhu, I'm not able to withstand it. So shalach le, so he sent him the following message: Dom la Hashem v'schololo dom la Hashem. You should be silent to Hashem, be patient. And we understand that to mean, again, dom la Hashem v'hu yapilim loch chalolim chalolim. What it means is be silent, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of it. He will make them fall as corpses. And what does that mean? It means hashkem v'harev alein lebeis hamedrash. It means get up early, stay late in the beis medrash, v'hein kolin me'alein, and they will disappear on their own. They will be finished of their own accord. And the Gemara says, Hadavar yatzam mipi Rebbe Lazar. These words, they came from Rebbe Lazar, and that's exactly what happened. Unesanuhu ligniva bekoler, and they put Geniva into the chains. Geniva was the tormentor, and he was taken. And Rashi says, Geniva hayacholik olav. Again, it was Geniva who was his antagonist. Koler shal sheles shal barzel. Again, this is like an iron chain. Shenosin shama machtavel malchus la'ariga. They put it around the neck of the person who is going to be taken by the government to be killed. And the Gemara continues, Shalachu leila marukva. They sent Marukva the following question: Zimra menolon da'aser. How do we know that it's forbidden to sing after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? So sirtet v'chasav lehu. So on a parchment again, he scratched lines and he wrote the following pasuk: Al tismach Yisrael al gil ka'amim. It says that Klal Yisrael should not rejoice again in this fashion after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara says, "V'lishlach lu me'acha." Why didn't he send from here, from the following pasuk? Bashir lo yishtu yayin yemar shechel l'shosav. It talks about the fact that you shouldn't have song when you're drinking the wine, and the beer is going to be bitter for those who drink it. Again, after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, there should be a limit on the celebrations. And the Gemara says, "Ime'ahu." If we had that pasuk, "Hava mina hani mili zimra daman," I would think that only applies to music that's made from instruments. Avol depuma shari, but maybe singing using a person's mouth, singing in that fashion is permitted. permitted. Kamash Malan, so that's what we need the other pasuk to say, that even if it's just singing, it is going to be problematic. Amarle Rav Huna bar Nasan Rav Ashi. Rav Huna bar Nasan said to Rav Ashi, Ma'id chsiv, what does it mean when it says in the pasuk, and this is in Sefer Yehoshua, pasuk says, Kina v'dimona v'adada. So what does that pasuk mean? Amar Lei, so he said to him, Misvasa d'Eretz Yisrael kachashiv. Those are just cities in Eretz Yisrael that the pasuk is listing. Amar Lei said to him, Matu anolo yadana de Misvasa d'Eretz Yisrael kachashiv. You think I don't know that these are cities in Eretz Yisrael? El Rav Gavia me'argizo Amar Bataim. However, rather, Rav Gavia from Argiza, he actually said a drasha, he said reasons behind these listings of cities. And what the pasuk means is as follows: Kol sheyesh lo kina al chaveiro, anybody who has jealousy over his friend, that's the idea of kina. V'domim, and he's silent, that's dimona. So if a person is silent about that, shochen adayad, the one who dwells eternally, osalodin, he will perform judgment on behalf of this individual. The person will be rewarded accordingly. And the Gemara says, Amar Lei said to him, Elameata, but according to that, so what about another pasuk which lists places? Pasuk says, Tziklog, Umadmana, Vitzansana, these are also names of cities. Hachanami, there also you should make a drasha. Amar Lei said to him, have a Rav Gavia mi Be'er Giza. If Rav Gavia from Be'er Giza was here, have Amar Batami, he would be able to say a reason, he would be able to say a drasha regarding these cities. And the Gemara continues, Ravacha mi Beichoza, Amar Bahachi, Ravacha from Beichoza, he did say a drush on this pasuk as follows. He said, Kol mi sheyesh lo tzakas legima al chaveiro. Anybody who has a claim against his friend pertaining to food, that the person didn't give him an appropriate amount of food, v'domim, and he's silent, shochin b'sneh, the one who dwells in the sneh, in the bush, osalodin, he will perform judgment on his behalf. And Rashi explains, again, the Gemara darshan the listing of cities in the Psukim, and the Gemara said, Kina, anybody who has Kina al Chaveiro, and Rashi says it doesn't simply mean jealousy, but it means Kas mach masar shatziro, he has a justified anger, because the person did something that was painful to him. And Tzakas Lagima, again, the Gemara darshan the other list of cities, that if a person has some kind of claim in terms of food, Shagoz Limenu v'yord l'chayav l'shari mizonosav, that the person stole from him, that he took his food. Again, so in those cases, if the person is silent, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewards him. And the Gemara continues, Amar Le Reish Galusul Rav Huna, the head of the exile, said to Rav Huna, Klila minolan d'asr. How do we know that Klila is forbidden? Klila was a kind of crown that the chasanim, that the grooms wore. Amar Le said to me, D'Rabbanan, it's prohibited to wear on a D'Rabbanan level. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, but Pulmus shel Aspasianus, by Vespasian's campaign, Gazrol Atoras Chasanim v'Alo Irus, they made a Gzeira on the Atoras Chasanim. Again, those are the crowns of the grooms. That's the same thing as the Klila. And Irus, that was some kind of musical instrument, maybe a drum. Adahachi kam Rav Huna lafnuya. Now, at that point in time, Rav Huna got up to relieve himself, to go to the bathroom. Amar Le Rav Chisda, so Rav Chisda said to him, Kruksiv, it's actually a pasuk that's written in terms of the decree against the Atoras Chasanim. Ko amar Hashem Elokim hasar hamitznefes v'harim ha'atara. The pasuk says, "So says Hashem, remove the mitznefes and lift off the atara. Zos lo zos, this will be no longer. Hashafela hagbeyav hagavoa hishbil, that which is low will be raised up. That which is raised up will be lowered." And sort of Chisda darshans the pasuk, v'chimayini mitznefes eitzel atara. What's the mitznefes here? Why is that being mentioned by the atara? Elalomar loch. Rather, the pasuk is telling you as follows. Bisman shemitznefes barosh kohen gadol. When there's a mitznefes on top of the head of the kohen gadol, meaning at the time when there's a Beis Hamikdash, so then atara barosh kol adam. So then all people can wear their crown. Again, referring to the crown of the groom over here. Nistalka mitznefes merosh kohen gadol. But if the mitznefes is removed from the head of the kohen gadol, if there's no longer a Beis Hamikdash, nistalka atara merosh kol adam. So then the crown is removed from all people. And the Gemara continues with the story, Adahachi Asar Rav Huna. So in the meantime, Rav Huna returned, Ashkechino Dehavi Yasvin, he found that they were sitting. Amar Lein, he said, Holakim by Gad Midrabanan, really it is a halacha Midrabanan, Elachista Shemach, but Chist is your name, V'chisdoyin Milach, and your words are pleasant. And the Gemara continues, Ravina Ashkeche Lamar Bar Ravashi to have a Godel Klila Levrate. Ravina found that Mar Bar Ravashi, he was braiding such a crown for his daughter. Amar Lei said to him, Lo Savar Lo Mar, doesn't the master hold Hasar Mitznefes V'harim Atara, remove the Mitznefes and lift off the Atara, that we're not supposed to wear crowns after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? Amar Lei said back to him, Dumya de Kohen Gadol. No, it only applies in cases similar to a Kohen Gadol, meaning Begavri. It only applies to the men, Aval B'Nishei Lo, but it doesn't apply to the women. And the Gemara continues, "My zos lo zos." What does it mean in the pasuk when it says zos lo zos? Darash Rav Avira, so Rav Avira darshan zimnin amar la mishmei deravami v'zimnin amar la mishmei deravasi. Sometimes he said it in the name of Ravami. Sometimes he said it in the name of Ravasi. B'shah amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael hasar mitznefes varim atar. At the time that Hakadosh Baruch Hu said to Klal Yisrael, remove the mitznefes and lift off the atara. Amru malachei asharis l'fnei Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So the malachei asharis said before Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the world, zos lohen liYisrael shekdimu lefanecha b'sinai nasa lenishma. Is this an appropriate thing to happen to Klal Yisrael, who said before you nasa, and they said nasa before nishma? Amar Lahen, he said to them, Lozos Lahen Yisrael, should this not happen to Klal Yisrael? Sheishpilu es hagavoa v'higbiu es hashafal, they lowered that which is high, they raised up that which should be low. V'hemidu etzelam behechel, and they put up an idol in the hechel. So this is a fitting punishment for Klal Yisrael because of these sins. And the Gemara continues, Darash Rav Avira darshan, the Zimnin Amar la Mishmei Ravami, v'Zimnin Amar la Mishmei Ravasi. Sometimes he said it in the name of Ravami, and sometimes he said it in the name of Ravasi. Ma'idich, what does it mean when it's written in the pasuk? Amar Hashem, so says Hashem, Im Shleimim v'chein Ravim, if they were whole, meaning whole in strength, and if they were many, v'chein Nagozo v'Yavar v'Gomer, but now they're going to be gone. And the pasuk means as follows: Imroa adam shemizonosov mitzumtzam, and if a person sees that his food, his sustenance is exact, yasa mehen tzedakah, so he should make some of it, that it should be tzedakah. V'kol shekein kishen merubin, and certainly if he has an abundance. Mai v'chein nagozo v'yavar, and what does it mean nagozo v'yavar? Tana devei Rabbi Yishmael, so it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. Kol hagozes min achasa v'yosa mehen tzedakah. Anyone who takes from his property and gives tzedakah with it, nitzal midina shel gehenim, he's going to be saved from the judgment of Gehenim. Mashal l'shtei rechilos shahayu ovros b'mayim. This is a mashal to two sheep that were passing through the water. Achaz gezuza v'achaz eina gezuza. One is sheared and one is not sheared. And that's the drush over here of a v'chein nagozu. Gezuza avra, the one that's sheared is able to cross through the water. V'sheina gezuza lo avra, but the one that's not sheared is not able to pass through the water. And Rashi explains shleimim whole, and again we darshan mitzumtzamim to mean exact. V'hachi kamar kran, the pasuk means as follows: Im shleimim mizonosecha v'chol shekeinim rabim. If you have an exact amount of food, and certainly if you have an abundance, v'chein nagozu v'yavar harein mishulim la'ovrim benar. So again we darshan that's compared to those who cross through the river al yedei gziza, by shearing the animals. Shagazuza overes kach gazes mehen letzedakah v'yir. The animal which is shorn is able to pass through the water. Similarly, if you shear off some of your money, some of your resources to tzedakah, so then they will increase, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Zayin Amud Beis.